folks, welcome into another edition of That Betting Show for May 23rd, 2019, your one-stop shop for all your sports betting needs. And the best part about it today, we promise to get you out in 20 minutes or less. He's Teddy Savransky. Give him a follow on Twitter at Teddy_Covers. I'm Donnie Seymour at Right Side VP. Let's get right into it tonight, Teddy. Game 5 in Milwaukee tonight. But before we get to a little bit of NBA action, call the coroner, Teddy. Something's going on there in Baltimore. It's May 23rd, and Gleyber Torres has 10 home runs versus the Orioles. Yes, you heard that right. Not 10 home runs in Major League Baseball. 10 versus a single team already. Orioles pitching, Teddy. We talked a little bit about yesterday. 105 home runs in only 49 games. Gleyber Torres hitting .250 versus the rest of Major League Baseball. How about against those Orioles, Teddy? .465. Another launch pad game yesterday in Baltimore.
Although I'll give the Orioles some credit. They bounced back after getting bombed early in that game and made things very, very interesting for anyone that had the Yankees or the Yankees on the run line in that game. Of course, the Yankees on the run line ended up cashing as well. Now 6-0 in Camden Yards this season against Baltimore. And you see one of those random things like Torres hitting .250 versus the rest of MLB and hitting .465 against the Orioles. And it tells us a lot about the Baltimore Orioles pitching staff. 105 home runs allowed in 49 games. In the history of Major League Baseball, the fastest any team has allowed 100 home runs was 57 games. So the Orioles are obliterating the all-time record of worst pitching staff ever when it comes to home runs allowed. Torres taking advantage, and the Yankee backers taking advantage as well.
I mean, how about some of those numbers, Teddy? 33 home runs in 11 games versus the Orioles this year. 25 home runs by a single team, Teddy. 6-0 the New York Yankees are when they head to Baltimore, hitting that many home runs. You've talked about it a few times here on That Betting Show, saying, you know what? It's not like football where it's saying, you know what? This team's really good. 14.5, we'll move it to 15.5, 16.5. Even though they're pricing the Yankees on the road routinely when they play Baltimore at -200 or higher, it doesn't seem to matter. They jump out 4-0 right away, and it's an easy scrape all the way through. It's amazing there because you talked about it before. Look, you can make the point, the money line's a little bit higher, but at the end of the day, there's no real point spread. They just have to win the game, and they're doing it.
Yeah, and then most importantly, the Orioles continue to lose, although it's worth noting for today's game, Torres expected to rest with an early start game on Thursday.
How about that? Yeah, rest up for those, bullets in the chamber for the rest of the season. How about this one, Teddy? And since it is Thursday, not a lot going on. One NBA game we'll get to a little bit later. Under the radar here, when we joked about the Marlins, boy, they can barely score, Teddy. Getting shut out, scoring one run, 4 or 5 game stretches, only picking up 2 runs. How about the 5-game winning streak by those Miami Marlins? And considering it, doing it in Motown. Now, Jose Urena kept the Marlins in the game. Sometimes that's all you have to do. Down 3-0. They waited to get to that Tigers bullpen and did it. 5 straight wins, all dogs for those Miami Marlins.
And they're dogs again today, and nobody's talking about Miami. Obviously, when you go through the first 40 games of the season and you win 10 of them, and people are talking about you competing with the 1962 New York Mets for the worst team of all time, yeah, when you win 5 in a row, A, they're going to be underdog prices, and B, it's going to take a while before the markets notice. All that being said, look, they beat the Mets over the weekend with Mickey Callaway hanging on to his job by a thread, and the Mets aren't exactly playing great ball. And then now, they beat the Tigers back-to-back game. The Tigers have lost 8 straight, all at home. The offense has scored just 19 runs during that slide. Blew the 3-run lead yesterday. Ron Gardenhire, quote, "It's just a really rough stretch right now. Nothing going too well. We'll think back to this day somewhere down the road and say, man, that was brutal. Let's not do that again." But that's where the Tigers are right now. So we'll take Miami's current winning streak with a little bit of a grain of salt. But all that being said, if you're riding them, that's a streak worth riding. When you have a bad team playing good ball, you can make a lot of money in a very short time. Any Marlins backer will tell you that if they've been riding them over the course of the last week.
Teddy, about like a better psyche here, because I know it's hard. We see the teams, you see the lineups come out, and every day the Marlins lineup come out, you sort of scratch your head and be like, where are the runs actually going to come from? Now, obviously going through their 6th straight win today, but we also look at a team like the Baltimore Orioles along with the Miami Marlins, betting it as just, looking at strictly at the numbers, trying not to get too emotional about it, because I know if you're just into the sports betting industry, you're just starting to lay down some bets, you say, man, I want to stay away from these teams. But keep in mind, over the length of the season, the worst teams in the league are going to get at least around 60 wins. Take a second here to talk about Teddy, saying, you know what? Sometimes you just have to take the emotion out of it and say, you know what? It's the right play today.
Sure. Well, I mean, there's a big difference between the worst teams winning 50 games and the worst teams winning 60 games when it comes to profitability at the end of the season, because you have the very bad teams. Every time they win, they're likely to be at an underdog price. So you're going to see those plus prices make the bankroll grow, as opposed to obviously laying chalk, where that's not going to happen when you lose. You don't get smacked for the unit. You get smacked for a unit and a half or 2 units or whatever it is when you're backing a price with the favorite. But look, I mean, when you look at all of Miami stats, their offense isn't as bad as the mainstream stats. Stuff like hard hit rate. You know, they've hit line drives. They've been hitting a lot of things, balls at somebody. And, over the course of a season, that tends to even out. We're seeing some of that evening out from the Marlins over the last couple of days.
Yep, those dogs with fleas, Teddy, every once in a while they're going to pay out sweetly. Those Miami Marlins have done it. Let's see if they can make it 6 in a row again as an underdog today in Motown. 2019 season preview today. And if anybody knows by any of my background from here on sportsbookreview.com, I am an Eagles fan, but we're going to go over the Dallas Cowboys. And truth be told, I've made a lot of money betting on the Dallas Cowboys over the past couple of years. Money is green, and let's get right to it here. Cowboys are 22-1 to win the 2019 championship, 11-1 to win the NFC, and the Cowboys team total this season, Teddy, is up to 9. Last year, going 5-1 in the division, 10-6 overall, winning a playoff game, which is not the easiest thing to do over the last 20 years in Dallas, coming up short there in the divisional round to the Los Angeles Rams. Big price tags coming up here, Teddy, for the Dallas Cowboys. Already one domino fell. DeMarcus Lawrence gets the big deal, over $100 million. Now up, as we see in the OTAs, everybody's circling around Dak Prescott. What's that contract going to be? We know the going rate for quarterbacks is expensive, but how can you pay the quarterback that much money and then also pay a running back top shelf? It's going to be an interesting season for the Dallas Cowboys, but I liked them last year. Liked what they did on defense, looking to carry that forward, maybe getting a little help back on the offensive line this year. I think they can get that 9 number, Teddy, as a total.
Sure. I mean, when you look at what they did last year, in some sense, they overachieved a little bit. For the season, their net yards per play is 0.0. And that means that what they gained is exactly what they allowed what they gained on offense is exactly what they allowed on defense on a yards per play basis. What they did well, they rushed the football well. And when you have Zeke Elliott and an elite offensive line that you're running behind, you're supposed to rush the football well. Plus 0.7 yards per carry between what they gained on offense and what they allowed on defense. Prescott's QB rating a 96.9, opposing QB rating a 95.7. Both good, not great. Plus 2 turnovers. They're really, from a statistical standpoint, this team was pretty close to 500 squad last year. And the stats kind of show it. They had an easier than average schedule last year. They've been a slightly easier than average schedule this year. Almost exactly the same in terms of strength of schedule from 2018 to 2019. And remember, the numbers I give you here on that betting show are not mainstream numbers. They're numbers that are based on this year's season win totals. That's how I analyze strength of schedule. And you factor in the juice and you make some real numbers as opposed to the garbage that you'll find from mainstream sites. This is all going to give you last year's numbers. It's not about last year anymore. When it came to the draft, I mean, well, they traded away the number 1 pick again. And you bring in Amari Cooper. Okay, that's worth it. But after that, who's going to come in and have an impact? Well, I love Connor McGovern, the 3rd rounder out of Penn State. More offensive line depth. Tristan Hill, the defensive lineman out of Central Florida, someone they can use in the 2nd round. But I'm not convinced there's going to be any impact players for Dallas in this draft. And you look at some of the, it's not like this team had a ton of money in the offseason to bring in key guys. Robert Quinn, maybe the biggest acquisition in the offseason. Randall Cobb, wide receiver. Someone that can come in and do something, but they lose a fair bit of talent. Cole Beasley leaves town. The bottom, Jeff Swaim is another one who they will likely miss. A couple of old, tired retreads coming back for potential comeback seasons. But frankly, I look at Dallas this year very similar to the way I looked at them last year. They're a pretty good team. They're a 9-win team. They're not a 10 or 11 or 12-win team, and they'll be on the fringe of playoff contention again in 2019. At least that's the way it looks right now as we look into our crystal ball.
Yeah, I always like in the NFL too as well, Teddy. Looks like they're set up to start fast. They usually get that annual game, it seems like, with the New York Giants at home. They'll be favored in that game. Going on the road versus the Redskins in week 2, starting probably a rookie quarterback for Washington. They'll probably be favored there. And then returning home against the lowly Dolphins, have one of the lower team totals in the entire National Football League. Looks like they could get out to a fast start. They can help them. And as we always like to joke around sometimes here on the show, Teddy, with Jason Witten coming back, does that improve your forecast on the Dallas Cowboys this year?
I would expect him to have a limited impact with Dallas in 2019 if he makes the team.
Absolutely. Overnight line movers here, SBRodds.com, the best place on the internet to check those line moves, Teddy. And how about this one? A standalone game in the NBA tonight. We're going to spend a little bit of time here, but we're going to recap it a little bit later in the show. Raptors Bucs. How about this total drop, Teddy? Opens up at 219 at multiple outlets here at SBRodds.com. I'm even showing now offshore, Teddy, 214.5 showing up. That's an amazing drop on a standalone game tonight.
Yeah, and when we consider the series, there's only been one under in the whole series. That was game one. So the last three games have all gone over the total. But the betting markets say, get those asterisks out. All right. The Bucs had a great offensive game in game two, and that's what sent it over the total. Game three needed double overtime to get over the total. And yeah, after one OT, it was still under. Game four, the Raptors had the great offensive game, and really tremendous offensive game from Toronto. So we had great offensive game, double OT, great offensive game. The last three, the markets are saying, especially as we're talking about game five, as the series, these two teams know each other now, series tend to get bogged down into slower paced affairs around this time of the series. That's why all the wise guy money's come on this under. It's not about season averages right now. It's about, I'm not convinced the execution is going to be there on offense. We're expecting Milwaukee to do better on defense, and the pace may not be all that fast in what could turn out to be a grinder of a series as you look at game 5, 6, and potentially 7.
We'll break that game down a little bit more in just a few moments. But how about this one yesterday, Teddy? You could hear the parlays explode from Las Vegas all the way to New Jersey yesterday with the White Sox fresh off a monster victory. Can the Sox make it 2 in a row? Let's take a look today. Giolito and Martin on SBRodds.com opened up offshore anywhere between minus 195 to 200. But seeing some money coming back here, Teddy, on Giolito and the White Sox down around 180, 185, 178, depending on where you're shopping at with a total of 9. Can it happen again today for those White Sox, Teddy?
And it's funny that you mentioned the parlays. I had an opportunity yesterday to talk with Jeff Davis from Caesars Sportsbook here in Las Vegas. And he's like, the Astros are a team like no other right now. They're literally on every single parlay we take every day. And they'd won 12 of their last 13 and had the lead last night. But lo and behold, the White Sox get hot. The youngsters, Jimenez and Tilson, hit 3 bombs, score 4 runs, 6 RBIs. Quote, Rick Renteria, it's a big pick-me-up. Basically what it does is reaffirms what they're capable of doing. It's a very good club on the other side. They've got some good chuckers. We were fortunate. So the markets like Chicago's offense a little bit, and they like the Giolito. They really do. His last 3 starts, 3-0 with an 0.93 ERA. He leads the team in wins, shut down Toronto last time out, and decent ERA in Houston. 3 career starts against the Astros, 0-2, but he has a 2.57 ERA on this field. Meanwhile, Maben for the Astros, he's not there's signs for Maben, but he's a young pitcher who is going through some growing pains. 5 hits, 4 walks over 4 innings in his second career start on Saturday at Boston was not a pretty effort.
Yeah, it looks like about 9 innings total on the season for the young pitcher. We'll see how that works out. But it's always interesting, Teddy, even though I don't really partake in lines that high, but I'm not going to lie. I sort of get a little bit of a chuckle when you see it go the other way, knowing that how many people just penciled that in as an automatic winner. It's gambling. It's human. These teams are going to win games as they did yesterday. We'll see if they continue that today. Watch what you bet here on That Betting Show. How about this? Best of 3 it's down to for the Eastern Conference Finals. The Raptors and the Bucs now sitting at -7, Teddy. A little bit earlier today, we had some 6.5s popping up on the board. Now we're seeing the shift back to 7. Over-unders, we just went over. 215s primarily across the board. 214.5s are starting to show up here. Raptors 46-50 against the number on the season. 11-8 against the number as a dog. The Bucs 57-35 against the number on the season. 48-31 as a favorite. Looking forward to it tonight. Do they bounce back? Look, we've seen the same thing. Home court advantage. 2-0, 2-2, back to Milwaukee, best of 3. Let's see what happens tonight.
Yeah, and we will see what happens tonight. We will see what happens in the next 2 or 3 games in this series. And just looking at the SBR odds screen right now, there are actually some 7.5s just starting to pop up. So if you like the Bucs, I'd get involved sooner rather than later. You've already missed the 6.5s. You don't want to be laying 7.5 by tip-off if you like Milwaukee. And again, it's just the first few books, but on the other hand, when the markets start to move, we know what the markets can do. I'm going to give you some quotes because, look, this is a series. We've all watched it. We've seen the first 4 games. It's not a series where we're going to talk about this matchup or that matchup. Series where, the 2 blowouts were Milwaukee having a great offensive game in game 2 and Toronto having a great offensive game in game 4. The other 2 games, One easily could have gone to overtime, and then the Bucs scored the last 10 points to get a cheap cover in game 1, and the other one went to double overtime in game 3. So let's talk a couple of quotes. Nick Nurse, Raptors head coach. Each game is its own entity. Let's see. If we can go do it in Milwaukee, we'll need to take this challenge of playing in a hostile environment. We're going into a tough, loud place to play. Let's see if these guys can bring that same pop, focus, and determination on the road. Remember how well the Raptors bench played in game 4. Not always easy to do that on the highway, especially coming off a brilliant effort. Budenholzer, quote, I think Tuesday's probably the first night defensively where I don't feel like we were close to where you need to be to give ourselves a chance. So credit to Toronto. They obviously played well and had a lot of guys step up and play well. Their bench was very good. Haven't seen that out of the Bucs. Mirotic, quote, we had a great start the first couple of minutes. We started aggressive, but then I think we allowed a lot of points, rotation, defensive transition as well. We didn't show the crowd as we usually do. They beat us on the boards, a lot of offensive rebounds. So it was just not the best game. But listen, nobody said it was going to be easy. We're 2-2. You go back to Milwaukee and do the same thing they did with us. They punched us here. We're going to do the same there. Giannis, we just came out in the third quarter flat. It's something we can get better at. It's something we can fix. It's something we've been doing all season. Usually in the third quarter, we come out and we're aggressive. We're making shots. We're moving the ball. Hopefully when we get back home, we can shoot better in the third quarter and throughout the whole game. The Bucs have no 3-game losing streaks this season. And sometimes when your team crashes and burns, all of a sudden something that hasn't happened all year happens in the postseason. I'm not convinced that's the case for this one. Milwaukee 19-5 ATS off a defeat. They were 19-4 prior to game 4.
Teddy, put you on the spot a little bit here. Do we think this is going 7?
No. I think it's going 6.
Ooh. There we go. All right, we'll see what happens here. But again, association back in action tonight. We'll have some fun looking at it. And if it does go 6 or 7, we'll obviously be here on that betting show to cover it. How about this one, Teddy? You're out on the West Coast. You're in Vegas. Rain, not really too much. Watching a Padres game in the rain was really interesting for me. But even more interesting, Teddy, is raining during the day. Nice, bright and sunny, ready for first pitch. Wait a second. We got a rain out in L.A. on Thursday afternoon. Thank you to the drainage at Angel Stadium of Anaheim. And that's another bone I have to pick with them, Teddy. The Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, Angel Stadium of Anaheim in Anaheim. Can't we just call it Angel Stadium and the Los Angeles Angels? Back to the game here. Twins and Angels, minus 140 today with a total of 9. It's going to be Perez and Harvey. And Perez, how about the rebirth of his career? How about the Twins bombing away? Does it continue today? Obviously, after yesterday, you get the day off. We'll see if that streak can continue tonight. But it should be an interesting one if we don't get rain.
So it's a Memorial Day weekend in Vegas, and it was 50 degrees and raining yesterday. I mean, literally, I've been out here 21 years. I've never seen anything like it in terms of, like, you're freezing in May. You have the heat on in late May. Weird weather here on the West Coast. But by the time last night's game was scheduled for the first pitch, the sun was shining. Of course, when you don't have any drainage in the outfield, it's a problem. First home rainout since 1995 for the Angels. So it's not like it's a problem they have all the time. Quote, there's still too much standing water in the outfield. It's just a matter of playing conditions. Ultimately, it's player safety first, and it's playing the game at a major league level. Now, Rocco Baldelli and the Twins were not happy about this. They were supposed to get out of town after yesterday's game. Baldelli, quote, I can't say I concurred, but it's not always the easiest call in situations like this. We probably played a few games this year and similar to what we would have been playing in. I think we probably could have played, but it's not my decision to make. All that being said, we're seeing steady money for the Angels. The wise guys have looked at the LA Angels and said, this is a team we want to be betting on. 9 of the last 11 games, Angels have closed having taken wise guy money. I don't know if that changes after the Anderson Simmons injury. That is an impact injury from a defensive standpoint. He's as good as anybody, any shortstop in the major leagues, and he's been a decent bat as well. Simmons out for LA, and Perez has been dynamite for the Twins. Twins continue to be the single most profitable team in MLB to support on a game-in, game-out basis. And the markets just haven't caught up with where they are.
One more game to watch in on MLB Extra Innings is going to be the Rays and the Indians. The Rays blast the Dodgers, head out of town and head to Cleveland. I got to tell you, Teddy, watching the Cleveland Indians sometimes is a painful experience. The lineup looks decent on the card. They just cannot get timely hitting. And we'll see if the season's going to slip away there because the Minnesota Twins playing some really good baseball. And we did the write-ups before the season. It looked like it was going to be the Cleveland Indians division just to hold on and ride through the summer. That's not going to be the case so far. They're underdogs at home here, plus 120 today with a total of 9.5. Yarborough's going to go against Plutko. Let's see if those Indians bats wake up.
Yeah, I mean, that's the truth of it. They just got swept at home. First time they've been swept at home in nearly 2 years, since June 2017. They scored only 9 runs in the last 3 games. Manager Terry Francona, quote, "If I had the magic potion, believe me, I'd give it to everybody. The best thing I know is not to drag our heads, not to feel sorry for ourselves because nobody cares, especially the teams we're playing. They're probably thrilled." We're talking about an Indians lineup. You're right. They're hitting 224 for the season. And you say, well, Francisco Lindor is hot, and Kipnis is on an on-base string, and Carlos Santana went yard again yesterday, and he's going. Doesn't matter. As a team, those few bats aren't getting the job done. All that being said, make an argument that Adam Plutko is an undervalued commodity. The markets don't like his advanced metrics. They didn't like him at all last year. What did he do last time out? 6 innings, 1 hit allowed, got a win over Baltimore. He was solid in 2018. It was not spectacular. And again, the numbers aren't going to blow you away, and the advanced metrics aren't going to blow you away. But the Indians won fairly consistently for Plutko last year, and maybe they bounce back strong off a really lousy series against the A's. I think there is value on the Cleveland side today. It's the only way I could look, even against a Tampa team that's playing pretty good ball.
Off topic, Teddy, a Michigan man at the helm in Ann Arbor, the Wolverines make Juwan Howard the head coach. John Beilein obviously moving on to the NBA with the Cleveland Cavaliers. 5-year deal for $2 million a season. Has a lot of a feel to me, Teddy, which you're looking at college basketball right now to try to strike when the iron's hot. Most of these players going back to their alma mater, if we take a look, Patrick Ewing back to Georgetown, Chris Mullin back to St. John's, Penny Hardaway to Memphis. Now, Jerry Stackhouse does go to Vanderbilt, even though he did go to North Carolina, but trying to get that hot wave recruiting, sit in the living room of some of these kids and say, look, I've been there, done that before, and we're going to win. We're going to do it big. Interesting move, and it looks like it's, widely liked across the NBA. Looks like Juwan Howard was a very good player, obviously, was a very good coach for the years that he was down in Miami, got some pretty good, background checks on him, so to speak, and it looks like hopefully it's going to work out. But if this does, do we see a wave of more NBA players going back to their alma maters and maybe even just going back to NCAA action? Because it looks like that's a trend that's going to hit.
Let me start with Juwan, all right? This is a guy who I knew when I was in Ann Arbor. I saw him a couple times when he was, I saw him once in D.C. when he was with the Wizards. Juwan Howard is a good man, period. Okay? He's a good fit. He's going to be a great coach. He's a leader of men. Now, he's replacing some pretty big shoes in Beilein. But he's certainly, and Howard has been, was a coach on the floor for many years, and then has been the assistant for Spoelstra in Miami. He deserves this shot. It's good to see some Fab Five love in Ann Arbor after they ripped the banners down. And I expect good things from Juwan Howard in the Michigan program moving forward. All that being said, to say, is this going to be a trend? I don't think it's going to be a broader trend, and this is why. In order to get these jobs, you got to sit on the bench and be the number 2 or the number 3 assistant for X number of years before you get that opportunity. Some guys are willing to do it. The guys that love the NBA and love the travel, and that's what they want to do, and that's what their life is, they'll do that. The guys that, I got an off-season home that I want to hang out in, it's not so easy to get them to take those 2nd and 3rd tier assistants job to work their way up to the head coach level. So we're seeing a handful. I don't think it becomes a huge trend where all NBA stars are moving on to collegiate head coaching jobs. That being said, I like the hire for the Wolverines. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, $50, $60, $70 million in the bank when some of these players are done, Teddy. Not really looking to grind, as you're right, the 3rd or 4th coach on the team and hit the road and try to recruit. Thank you for tuning into That Betting Show on May 23rd, 2019, your one-stop shop for all your sports betting needs. He's Teddy Savransky. Once again, give him a follow on Twitter at Teddy_Covers. I'm Donnie Seymour at Rightside VP. We'll see what happens tonight in the NBA, and we'll talk about it tomorrow right here on the show. Good luck tonight, fellas.